A question was asked of me a couple of days ago about the lore behind diamonds being required for divine magic that brings people back from the dead. This prompted a bit of research and asking questions of very knowledgeable people who turned up a pretty stark answer. The reason behind it is that diamonds are very expensive, rare, and needing them for such spells greatly limits the use of this powerful magic in the game by adventurers. The more interesting but purely personal view I had on it was that the diamonds were required to both show the gods the sacrifice in material goods being given and the purity of the diamond being a factor as well, which is why you can't just use rubies or emeralds, for example. My other idea was that in the casting of these sorts of spells, radiant energy from the divine realms is sent through the diamond like a projector lens, but the process simply burns out the diamond like it was an old school camera flashbulb. I also had the good fortune to be directed to a particular conversation on the N-World discussion boards, and I'd like to talk about the topic of powerful divine magic, the impact it would really have on a fantasy world, and some weird and quirky but entirely reasonable and logical day-to-day realities that people living on a world with miraculous healing available to them would experience. How does this affect everyday folks? How can you extrapolate the implications to really enrich your campaigns and to engage your players on new types of adventures and special activities that you may not have considered until today? Hello, by the way, my name is AJ Pickett. I make lots of videos about role-playing game lore, particularly monsters, exotic locations, cosmology, and the history of well-known fantasy worlds of Dungeons & Dragons. Grab yourself a tasty beverage. We're about to get deeply nerdy. In 5th edition, we have a number of spells that can bring people back from the dead, though there are notable differences. It's not all restricted to clerics and divine powers. The druids also have a spell called Reincarnation, a 5th level spell. That means a druid needs to be at least 9th level in character class before they can cast it. They need to have 1,000 gold worth of rare oils and unguents. An unguent is also an oily ointment that is applied as a soothing semi-solid paste that is spread onto a wound, burn, rash, or some other local injury directly. A good example would be hydrocortisone cream or some essential oils and a coconut oil that melts as you apply it. Anyway, the druid needs only to apply the material components to a humanoid or a piece of a humanoid who has been dead for no longer than 10 days, and a new body will form. It might use up the remains of the former body, it might sprout in the form of a big pod that opens to reveal the new body inside. It might be slightly different every time depending on what sort of environment the druid is in. The body then wakes up, takes its first breath as the deceased person's soul then enters it. They remember their former life and retain all of their skills, but they now have a new body, which is most likely going to be a different species from what they were originally. The table for possible body options is a bit tame in 5th edition. In older editions, you could end up a pixie, a minotaur, even a centaur. The GM, rules as written, can simply choose the new form of the body rather than roll on the table, so fair warning, it can get wild. This makes reincarnation a fun, if tricky, way to return not just from death, but a death where the body was badly mutilated, partially digested, or mostly disintegrated, which means it is as effective as a very high-level cleric spell of true resurrection, because it provides a brand new body and there are no stated restrictions other than the length of time the person has been dead, which means it works on someone who has been undead or died of old age or disease, and the new body is not influenced by any curses or afflictions the old body had. If you happen to be a crime lord or have a lot of powerful enemies, be at the end of your natural lifespan and so on, this is a fantastic spell, and druids who can cast the spell on each other are effectively immortal. Reincarnation is a massively powerful spell for a 9th level druid to have, and so I wonder, aside from the cost, how rare are those oils and unguents? My guess is that they are very rare and require the efforts of the entire druid circle to source, prepare and preserve them, and give them out only in situations of dire need, but it's really up to you. Now, aside from reincarnation, the rest of the spells are in the hands of the divine spellcasters, the clerics, paladins, bards. Yeah, well, yes, technically a paladin can get to the point where they can cast Raise Dead, however they have to reach a minimum of 17th level of experience in that character class before a character can actually cast a 5th level spell to Raise Dead. Clerics and bards can reach that point by the time they get to 9th level and get access to the resurrection and regeneration spells from 13th level of experience. If we're talking about non-player characters, which a large chunk of this video is basically about, the divine casters able to perform a Raise Dead spell must be between at least challenge rating 8 and 10, and those who can cast Resurrection would have to be between CR 13 and 15, and those who can cast True Resurrection would need to be CR 17 or higher. Those challenge ratings are a good indicator where those individuals sit in the game world just by the tier of play that their challenge rating puts them in. But more importantly, it tells us that the player characters who have reached those levels of experience are now in a whole new relationship with the organization behind all the skills, training, history, resources and political power which allows them to have a character class in the first place. It's all too common with 5th edition game mechanics, all too easy to just run your adventures with almost zero need to return to civilization, rest, restock and continue the training of the player characters. And this is a real problem because it ignores a huge part of the structure and politics of those civilizations and the wide array of perks they provide and the demands they must place on those player characters. So to give an example of this, we're going to explore the concept of a fantasy world where being brought back from the dead is just part of their reality and what that could look like in the form of something as mundane as a life insurance policy. Strap in, this is going to get wild. First, we need to look at those divine spells and what they can and can't do, and then we can look at the component cost and what they do and do not tell you about that. For example, look at what it says about diamonds. It states the value required. It does not state the weight, quality or carats of the diamonds required, and that's quite important. The Revivify spell, it's only 3rd level, which means a cleric or bard gets that at level 5. Paladins get access to that at level 9. Take note of this, I'm about to talk about spell scrolls in a moment. The spell states that the spellcaster can touch a creature that has died within the last minute. They use 300 gold worth of diamonds, which are burnt out like flashbulbs in the process, so they're consumed. They turn into coal. And the dead creature returns to life with 1 hit point. The spell doesn't cure any diseases, or restore missing limbs, or rejuvenate a creature that has died of old age. Try finding me some rules for dying of old age in 5th edition, I dare you. Kind of important considering that ghosts exist. But anyway, this spell has limited usefulness outside of an adventuring group. Or does it? The spell scroll rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide are not the easiest thing to read through. It took me a while to figure out how the rarity of a spell scroll was determined. It turns out it's based on the minimum character level the scroll creator must be to cast the spell being inscribed on the scroll. Oh really, Wizards of the Coast? Then explain how a scroll of Revivify created by a paladin is rare and one created by a cleric or bard is merely uncommon. Whoops. Thankfully, Xanathar's Guide to Everything has some clarification and another handy table. They still suck at telling you if the scroll is going to be uncommon, rare or whatever. It wouldn't kill them to print a little symbol next to the spell listing in the player's handbook and other sources that indicate if a spell can be a scroll, how much it costs, how long it takes and how rare that scroll is. Let's put that nugget aside for 6th edition, shall we? To cut a long story short, with Revivify, a cleric or bard must be a minimum of 5th level and know how to cast the spell. They must have the formula for making the scroll or have proficiency in the Arcana skill, because casting the spell is only half of the process. The spell scroll for Revivify is an uncommon, consumable magic item and requires 500 gold pieces to make, plus the 300 gold pieces worth of diamonds to empower it, and it takes 1 work week to create. This is actually very vague in a clever way. For example, on the world of Toril, a week is 10 days. Prior to the Industrial Revolution and our modern obsession with working ourselves to death, it was common to work only 4 or 5 hours per day. So it's highly subjective, and this table works much better for world building if you ask me. What it does say is that creating a scroll is a solitary task, which is not the impression you get when reading the magic item rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide. This is important because selling scrolls of Revivify could have a huge impact on your campaign world. While the spell is handy for adventurers facing deadly threats in the wilds and ruins, a large church, temple, or bardic college, or even a cult, could also produce a consumable magic scroll that can restore life to a person who dies suddenly. I can think of all kinds of work sites and public venues where that sort of thing would be almost essential if it was available for purchase. Think of the places that have things like EpiPens, defibrillators and such. Public swimming pools, gladiator arenas, dangerous work sites, alchemist laboratories, carried by bodyguards of the rich and powerful or political leadership, and so on. The random table for scroll scribing complications is also a hot source for adventure plot ideas, particularly result number 2. A priest of a temple of good accuses you of trafficking in dark magic. You see, Revivify is a necromancy spell, so is Raise Dead, so is resurrection, so is true resurrection. Necromancy magic is generally not okay with the churches of the gods of goodness. However, the power to bring back people from the dead has simply awesome earning potential, and no scroll crafting is required, just a constant flow of diamonds. Raise Dead is a 5th level spell. Clerics and bards must be at least 9th level, and it doesn't cure magical diseases or restore lost limbs, and won't work on decapitated corpses nor raise the undead. The subject cannot have been deceased for more than 10 days, and casting the spell requires 500 gold coins worth of diamond. Resurrection is a 7th level spell. Again, it doesn't cure magical diseases or raise undead, but will restore body parts, and the subject can have been dead for up to a maximum of 100 years. Think of the social implications of bringing back somebody from 100 years ago. It requires 1000 gold coins worth of diamond. Finally, True Resurrection is a legendary 9th level spell that does fully restore the subject, including missing limbs, and the subject can be restored even if dead for up to 200 years. None of those spells will restore a person who died of old age, but even if a body part is completely destroyed, the caster need only know and speak the subject's true name. This spell closes all wounds, neutralizes any poisons, cures all diseases, and lifts any curses affecting the creature when it died. The spell replaces damaged or missing organs and limbs. If the creature was undead, it is restored to its non-undead form. The spell can even provide a new body if the original no longer exists, in which case you must speak the creature's name. The creature then appears in an unoccupied space you choose within 10 feet of you. Casting it requires 25,000 gold pieces worth of diamonds. Again, it says nothing about how large the diamond needs to be, and I think the more common these types of spells are, the rarer diamonds are going to be. The diamonds must flow. The number of 9th to 11th level clerics by population works out to be around 1 in 100,000 people. Around 1,700 of those people will die each year. About half of those deaths are the type that Raise Dead spells won't fix. A lot of the common and exotic diseases in a fantasy world can be cured easily by the lesser and greater restoration spells before death occurs, so infant mortality is actually fairly low. Each Raise Dead spell requires a 500 gold piece diamond, the services of the High Cleric, and a supporting staff, some skilled hirelings, scribes, accountants, jewelers, undertakers to transport a body, perhaps even some agents who are hired to go and collect bodies and so on. Plus whatever it costs to source a near constant supply of 500 GP diamonds that organisation needs all year round, which is logistically difficult to say the least. But even a conservative estimate means that a cleric in that organisation can pull in an income flow of at least 400,000 gold per year. Divide that massive sum up by the 100,000 population and it's only 4 gold per person per year. But wealth and power is most certainly not evenly distributed. After a bit of math, it works out that the cleric's organisation could sell a life insurance policy, or rather 3 different policies, only 2 of which are public information, the basic and the deluxe, and the invitation only ultra deluxe. The basic package costs you 5 gold per year with access to body retrieval. Some surcharges may apply, danger involved, distance travelled and so on, and you will receive the Raise Dead spell. Other factors will impact this premium, such as age, gender, general health and lifestyle or trade. The deluxe package costs 500 gold per year with a surcharge of an additional 1000 gold per incident, but you receive the resurrection spell. And finally, the ultra deluxe costs 5000 gold per year with an additional 25,000 gold per incident, but you receive the true resurrection spell. It may take some time for a cleric of sufficient experience to arrive and perform the spell, but gentle repose is all part of even the basic insurance package, and well, as well as security for the body while it lays in state. So, as you can see, this has a major economic impact on clergy as not just a faith, but as an industry. A youngster would absolutely see this as an excellent career to get into. Parents would be shoving their kids into acolyte training just as kids strive to get into medical school in the real world. Access to this sort of magic also raises deep questions about the political and economic power of religious organisations. They may well restrict entry into the profession based on politics, such as only taking in orphans with no affiliation to anybody but the church, or only accepting the children of the nobility and the very wealthy. Any political or trade leverage the church fosters will most certainly be very, very heavily geared towards one thing though: the constant supply of diamonds. The diamonds must flow. Also, raised dead may mean that some accidental deaths are less of a problem, but things like getting an arm or a leg lopped off in an accident or fight is not something your insurance policy can cover if you're on the basic plan, and getting your head cut off, being turned into an undead, or having chunks of you magically disintegrated, these are all quite serious. It can have subtle, but when you think about it, quite obvious impacts on day-to-day life. For instance, it may be perfectly legal to openly carry weapons that typically do not result in a loss of limbs or decapitation. So short swords, most piercing weapons, light bludgeoning weapons, but even simple slashing weapons could be illegal to openly carry outside of places of trade and industry. Getting into a fight and killing an insured individual may result in the church pressing charges to cover the additional costs of fully restoring the victim. From an adventuring point of view, I strongly encourage you to adopt a regular line of grunt work going to locations of some risk to retrieve a body of a paid up client. Time is of the essence. If the body is decayed or partially eaten by wild animals, the church may have a lump sum policy to pay out to clients' next of kin. It certainly provides a very solid reason why clerics would go on adventures and face down and exterminate monsters that eat people. They are really bad for business and therefore enemies of the faith. Then there is the question of crime, hereditary titles, assassinations and so on. If someone is sentenced to death, the state obviously doesn't want them to be mildly inconvenienced, so they would take steps to ensure that they stay dead. The best way is to have an 11th level or higher wizard on call to cast disintegration on the condemned, which reduces them to a fine powder and would require an ultra deluxe true resurrection or wish spell to come back from. You may be getting the heavy subtext here that characters over level 10 have a very good, comfortable reason to retire from the adventuring life and live a pretty lavish, although hard-working lifestyle. It's also nice to know that a cleric with the power to raise the dead could call on the resources of a massively influential organisation with access to millions of gold in emergency funds. And think about it, if diamonds are more heavily concentrated in specific geographic locations, they are the D&D equivalent of a massive oil reserve. Churches would have a very good reason to pay very close attention to those locations and could spark off major diplomatic incidents or even be the cause of two nations going to war with each other. The church having enough funds to hire an army of hobgoblins and even a younger dragon who is looking to establish a horde out of payment for showing up with a goblin army and just looking really bloody intimidating. There are some semantics. It just says the diamond must be worth a certain value. It doesn't say anything about how big that diamond must be or the quality of that diamond. If the supply of diamonds becomes so critical they become even more valuable, thus reducing the size and quantity requirements of the material component, it may be that a 500 gold diamond is only a fraction of 1 carat. It will also mean that diamonds found in a treasure are highly sought after, and the churches may take a very dim view of those diamonds not being under their control. There may not be a single merchant in any large city that will pay what the adventurers are asking for when they try to sell them diamonds, because they would face significant fines and such if they did not then sell the diamonds directly to the church for a much reduced price. Give a few thoughts to supply and demand. If an evil church is the only place that is producing spells of revivify or casting resurrection magic for people with money, this creates enormous elbow room for inserting plots and complications to a campaign. If the only way to restore a lost character or an extremely important NPC is to travel into a dangerous swamp and seek out an ancient tribe of lizard folk who can cast the magic, perhaps the adventurers have to perform some task before the lizard folk lift a clawed finger to fix them. Perhaps the secret of true resurrection is knowledge that only the gold dragon scholars know and they're not sharing it. I hope that inspires some thoughts on your world building and the complex issues that such miraculous spells involve. A lot of the information presented here is derived from a post by member Kinematics of the N-World message board forums. Big shout out to them. Thanks for listening, everyone.